I'm going to create the simple C# application. It will be a console application. That's the type of application that is used to get the basics of how a C# application looks like. So how to do that? I'll use Visual Studio to do that. I'm gonna go to the file menu, create a new project in Visual Studio. Let's create a new project, and I'm going to select console app on the templates list of templates, and you must make sure here on the far left of your new project window you have selected the C# language, or you have selected an option under the Visual C# language, because there are different languages in Visual Studio. You might be looking at a different language than this one, but that just make sure that you have selected the C# language and you have selected the Windows desktop, and on the list of templates for application select the console application. So then we are going to give the name to our application, and we are going to say it's first application. That's the name of our application. So let's change. I will also change the directory of this application. I want to put it on the C drive. My applications. Let's write it. My applications. This is where I want it. You can put it anywhere. So this is where my first application is going to be stored, and I'm selecting OK after that. So what Visual Studio is going to do is going to give us the skeleton of an application, of a C# application. As you can see, we said we have source files. So where's the source file for this code? We'll go to Solution Explorer. This is where this source files is for this code. This is the physical file. This is the file that you can find on your hard drive, and this is what it contains. This is the type that it has inside it. But because, as I've explained, we need to declare the types inside our source files. The types that we have in our source files have to belong to a namespace. So the namespace, it's the first application. Basically, the namespace would be in this case, our namespace is the first application, which is basically the name of our application. Even the assembly that we are going to produce from this application is going to have the first application, but it's gonna be .dll application. So inside this program type, we have a special method they called main. So this main method, it's what the CLR is going to use as an entry point inside our application. Otherwise, without this main method, like in procedural languages, you had to write your code in the order that you want it to be executed. So in C# we don't have to do that. Why? Because they have introduced this way, where the CLR, it's going to search through the namespace that is containing your code, looking for a type that defines this method. When it finds that type with this method, that is where it begins to execute your application. You can write anything inside here, because this is where your application will begin. For now, what we are going to do here, it's just printing a message into a black window, because this is our console application. So I'm going to write something on the black window, and all we're going to do is to write hello world. This is what we are going to see on our black window. What are we doing? Console.writeLine. Not write line. We need to read line to wait for the enter key. .read line. So when the CLR or when we run this application, the CLR, it's going to go through the collection of the types that are defined here, but here there's only one type, which is program, and it will be searching for a method inside the program. It's going to look for a main method, when it finds the main method, it's going to start execution of your application from there. And all it's going to do for now here is to print a hello world into a black window, and then it's going to wait for the user to hit enter to close that application. Otherwise, without this line of code, what is going to happen is we are going to see a black window and then it disappears even before we can really see what it has displayed in it. So we're going to run this application, or before we run it, let's go to Solution Explorer. So if you go to Solution Explorer and you hover your mouse over these Solution Explorer options and look for an option that will say show all files, which is this one, we're going to see 2 new folders being added into our project. As you can see that they are dotted to show that they are basically not part of the project. They are not part of the project for a reason that we would be not editing these files directly. These files will be created, the files inside these folders will be created by Visual Studio, and they will be also edited by Visual Studio. So the file that I want, or the folder that we will be looking at, it's the bin. Binary. Bin, it's basically a shorthand for binary. This is where our the namespace for this application is going to be stored. For now, because we haven't we don't have a compilation of this application, there is nothing inside this folder. So the moment we start compiling this code, we will find files inside this folder. So how do you compile an application in C# is to go to build file menu and look for build first application. So because here we might have more than one application inside our Solution Explorer, not Solution Explorer, inside our Visual Studio solution, we might have more than one application. So when you build here, depending on what application you have selected here, when you come to build, you will find that you have build first application because we only have one application inside there. If we had another application inside this solution, and depending on which application we have selected here, then we will see a different thing here. But for now, it's simple because there's only one application. So we're going to build our first application to produce the .exe file. This is an assembly that we talked about in our introduction. This is what Visual Studio has produced for us. This is the file that we supply to our users to use our application. So don't worry about these ones. You will learn about them as you go on. So what I've done now, I've opened this file. I'm gonna close it. Just gonna close it. So now we have a compiled code for our application. Let's go back to our application. So now we have our compiled code. So now let's start debugging the code. Let's not debug it, let's start it. So now we run our application. Let's see what it does. And there's our application with hello world. That is all what our application is doing for now. So now let's start explaining this. As we can see, we said we have source files. In this case, we only have one source file, which is program.cs. So inside the source files, we declare types. Here we have declared program. This could be anything. We could write anything, like let's say first program. Let's change it to first program. First program. The application is going to work exactly the same. It does the same. That's exactly the same thing. Let's do this rename. That's our first program. So what CLR is going to do to be able to run this application, it's going to go into this because when we click start, what Visual Studio does is to tell CLR, I want you to execute this application. And then when the CLR comes into this file, it's gonna go through the code inside this file, which is this thing, looking for a type. Here we only have one type. Looking for a type that defines this main method. When it finds this main method, it starts executing the code inside the main method. You can have any number of types inside this thing. Second class, let's say that. So this class could contain properties like public, let's say name. You need to give the type. Let's say name, and then you can compile this build first application. Now this .exe file now has that type, but the CLR, before it executes this application, it's gonna go through this collection of types here. We have now 2 types. It's gonna come to this type and then look for a main method and find that no, this is not the type that we are looking to start executing this application, and then come to first program and look for the main method. When it finds it, it start executing the application. So that's how the CLR execute this application. So there are keywords here such as static. What does static means into this one? Void. What does void mean? Main, it's basically the name of the method. And in your C# application, there has to be a type with that main method. You can have multiple of them, or you can have a main method with, you can have something like this, static int and then main without parameters, which returns true. Normally this one would be when you want to return something to the caller. This one does not return anything to the caller. Here you can use this one when you want to trap, maybe for something like errors that has happened when you begin your application. So the most important thing here is to note here is that you must have at least one type that defines the main method. It doesn't matter which main method you define, but there has to be a main method inside one of your type of your application, because that's the entry point for the CLR to start executing your application. So now we would be learning the most fundamental